It's strange how peace can shatter in an instant. For me, it all began on a golden Saturday morning. The air smelled faintly of cut grass, the kind of crisp autumn day where the world feels gentle, almost forgiving. I had just finished polishing the hood of my 1969 Mustang fastback, a car I had restored with my own two hands, bolt by bolt, over years of patient labor. For me, this car wasn't just a machine. It was a piece of my late father, a man who taught me everything about honor, its grit, and the value of hard work. I remember wiping the chrome bumper when I heard a sharp voice pierce the quiet. "Excuse me?" I turned. Standing at the edge of my driveway was Karen, our HOA president. Her perfectly pressed blouse looked as stiff as her expression, and her eyes narrowed on the car like a hawk circling prey. "That car is gorgeous," she said, stepping closer without waiting for an invitation. "My son has prom tonight, and he absolutely deserves to arrive in style. Be a good neighbor and lend it to him." Her words weren't a request. They carried the same tone as a command, as though the car already belonged to her. I chuckled politely, thinking she might be joking. "Karen, this car isn't just transportation. It's a part of my family. I don't lend it out. I'm sorry." Her lips thinned. "Don't be ridiculous. It's just a car. He'll only use it for a few hours. Don't you want to see a young man make memories? Or are you planning to hoard it in that garage forever?" I felt a familiar tightness in my chest, the same one I used to get back in my early patrol days when someone crossed the line. Still, I kept my voice calm. "It's not about hoarding. This Mustang was my father's dream. I restored it after he passed. It's more than steel and wheels, it's a legacy. I can't just hand it over." Karen rolled her eyes dramatically. "Oh, please. Every man thinks his car is special. You have a responsibility to this community. We look out for each other, and frankly, it would be selfish not to share." Her words stung, but not because of their truth. They stung because of her audacity to twist something sacred into selfishness. I stood straighter, polishing cloth still in my hand. "Karen, I'm not changing my mind. That car doesn't leave my care. End of story." For a moment, silence hung heavy between us. Then she leaned forward, her voice sharpening like broken glass. "You'll regret this. You think being stubborn makes you noble? No. It makes you arrogant. We'll see what the HOA has to say about your precious legacy." And with that, she stormed off, heels clicking angrily against the pavement. I sighed, rubbing my temples. I'd dealt with entitled people before. Years on the force had taught me to keep my cool. But little did I know, this wasn't the end. It was only the beginning of a storm. That evening, as I sat on my porch sipping black coffee, I noticed Karen pacing outside her house, phone pressed tightly to her ear. Her voice carried across the cul-de-sac, sharp and animated. I couldn't hear every word, but one sentence echoed like a gunshot in my mind. "If he won't cooperate, we'll make him." I felt a chill crawl down my spine. My instincts, honed over decades in law enforcement, told me this wasn't idle chatter. Karen was plotting something, and deep down, I knew it wouldn't end with just angry words. The next morning, I thought maybe I had imagined the whole thing. Maybe Karen had cooled off overnight, realized how absurd her demand had been, and decided to drop it. I wanted to believe that. After all, people sometimes say foolish things in the heat of frustration. But peace never lasts long when entitlements first. At around 9 a.m., I was in the garage polishing the steering wheel, the scent of leather filling the air when I heard it knocking. No, not knocking, pounding, relentless, impatient. I opened the door to find Karen standing there, arms crossed, her face twisted into a mask of self-righteous fury. "Well," she demanded. I blinked. "Well, what?" "My son is ready for prom. Where are the keys?" I let out a slow breath. "Karen, we already had this conversation. The answer is no." Her nostrils flared. "You don't understand, do you? I've already told him he'd have the car. He's been bragging to his friends all week. If you embarrass him now, you'll ruin his special night." I shook my head gently. "I'm sorry if he's disappointed, but that isn't my responsibility. My car isn't a community resource." Her voice rose, sharp enough to make a couple of neighbors peek through their curtains. "You think you're better than everyone else, don't you? Always hiding that car like it's a crown jewel? I've given this community years of service as HOA president, and you can't even do one small thing." I felt the heat rising in my veins, but I kept my tone steady. "Respect goes both ways, Karen. You can't demand something that was never yours to begin with," she sneered. "Fine, you leave me no choice." Before I could ask what she meant, she spun on her heel and marched back toward her house. Less than an hour later, I found out exactly what she meant. I was watering the lawn when the sound of sirens cut through the suburban quiet. Red and blue lights reflected off my garage windows as a patrol car pulled into the cul-de-sac. My neighbors spilled onto their lawns whispering, eyes darting between Karen, who stood proudly on her porch, and me. 2 officers stepped out. One young and nervous-looking, the other older, his jaw tight with the weight of authority. "Sir," the older officer said, "we received a complaint from your HOA president. She claims you've been threatening her and withholding community property." I almost laughed at the absurdity, but the weight of the moment pressed down on me. Karen was grinning like she'd already won. "That's right," she called out. "He's hiding a vehicle that should be available for residents," I told him, and he got aggressive. "My son has a right to that car tonight. He can't just keep it locked away." The younger officer frowned, clearly uncertain. "Sir, is there any truth to this?" I straightened, feeling decades of training surge back. "Officers, I can assure you, I've threatened no one. That vehicle is my private property. I have every right to refuse lending it out. And as for community property, this isn't a park bench. It's a car I restored with my late father's tools. It's mine, legally and personally." Karen's voice screeched across the yard. "He's lying. He's dangerous. Arrest him before he hurts someone." My neighbors gasped, the tension thick as smoke. The younger officer's hand hovered near his radio. The older one studied me, suspicion flickering in his eyes, but not conviction. I could have revealed the truth right then. I could have pulled rank, shown my badge, ended the charade in seconds. But I didn't. Not yet. Something inside me wanted to see how far Karen would go, how deeply entitlement could dig its claws before snapping. The older officer turned back to me. "Sir, I'll need to ask you to step away from the vehicle while we sort this out." Karen folded her arms, triumphant. "Yes. Take him away. That car belongs to the neighborhood now." The Mustang gleamed in the sunlight behind me, a silent witness to the absurd theater unfolding. My father's legacy. My blood, sweat, and years. I swallowed hard, fighting back the storm of emotions inside me. Sadness, anger, disbelief, and somewhere beneath it all, patience. The kind of patience my badge had demanded countless times before. I looked straight at Karen and said quietly, "Be very careful with the words you're choosing." But Karen didn't flinch. She smirked. "What are you going to do? Call the cops?" The irony almost made me laugh. Almost, little did she know the cops were already here. And I wasn't just another neighbor. I was their chief, and the moment of truth was coming. The street felt like a stage, and every neighbor had taken a seat in the audience. Karen stood tall on her porch, her grin sharp with victory. The 2 officers waited, one with his notebook ready, the other watching me closely, as though I were already guilty. And there I was, standing beside my Mustang. The weight of my father's memory heavy on my chest. I could hear my father's voice in the back of my mind. Steady and calm, just as he used to sound when I was a boy fixing bicycles in the garage. "Son, when you're pushed, don't push back with fists. Push back with truth." So I did. I reached into my back pocket and pulled out my leather badge holder. Slowly, deliberately. I flipped it open and held it up for the officers to see. The younger officer blinked, confusion washing over his face. The older one straightened immediately, his jaw tightening in recognition. "Chief?" he said quietly, the single word cutting the tension like a knife. Gasps rippled through the crowd of neighbors. Karen's smirk faltered for just a second, but pride kept her chin high. "Yes," I said, my voice steady, but low. "I'm Chief Robert Callahan, head of this city's police department. And I'm standing in my own driveway, being accused of theft of my own car? The silence that followed was deafening. Karen sputtered, her confidence wobbling. He's lying. That badge is fake. He's making this up to scare us. The older officer stepped forward, his tone respectful. Ma'am, with all due respect, I've worked under Chief Callahan for nearly 10 years. That man has dedicated his life to protecting this community. He turned to me. Chief, I'm sorry about the misunderstanding. Karen's face turned crimson. No. You can't just believe him. He threatened me. He's hiding property from the HOA. You have to arrest him. The younger officer looked helplessly between us, torn between her shrill insistence and the weight of the truth staring him in the face. I took a step closer, my voice calm but commanding. Karen, listen carefully. That car is not, has never been, and will never be HOA property. You have no authority over it, and you know it. Making false reports to the police is a crime. Do you understand what you've done here? Her lips trembled, but she forced herself to speak. I was only trying to give my son something special. You could have helped. You chose to be cruel. I felt a pang in my chest, not of guilt, but of sorrow. Her words revealed more than anger. They revealed desperation. Karen, I said more gently now, I'm not your enemy. I'm a man who lost his father and poured his heart into a car because it was the one thing we built together. That Mustang is the last living piece of him. When you demanded it, it wasn't just about a car. You were asking me to give up a part of my father. And no parent, no son, should ever be forced to let go of that. The crowd was utterly still. Even the officers lowered their gaze, the weight of my words hanging heavy in the autumn air. For the first time, Karen's eyes softened. Just a flicker. But it was there. Her voice cracked. You don't understand? My son has been bullied, laughed at, ignored. I just wanted him to have one night where he felt proud. I paused, the anger in me subsiding. Underneath her arrogance was something raw, something I recognized. The love of a parent twisted into entitlement by fear and pride. I do understand, I said quietly. But teaching your son that the world owes him everything, that he can take whatever he wants without respect, that won't give him pride. It'll give him pain. Real pride comes from earning something yourself. Karen's shoulders slumped slightly, as though the fight was leaving her body. But then the whispers from the neighbors grew louder, judgmental. She called the cops for nothing. She lied. How embarrassing. Her pride flared one last time. This isn't over, she snapped, retreating into her house and slamming the door. The officers exchanged uneasy looks. The younger one muttered, Chief, we'll file this as a false report. She might need a warning. I nodded, though my heart felt heavy. Watching her storm away, I knew the battle was won, but the war inside her wasn't. And I couldn't shake the feeling that maybe, just maybe, I had seen a crack in her armor. A crack where the truth could seep in. That night, I couldn't sleep. The events replayed in my mind like a film stuck on repeat. The flashing lights, the neighbors whispering. Karen's face pale with shock when she realized who I really was. I kept thinking about her last words, about her son. I just wanted him to feel proud. It echoed in my head because, beneath all her arrogance, there was a mother's desperation, and I understood that. I had seen it before, in countless cases during my career, parents fighting, sometimes in the wrong way, to give their children something better. The next morning, the neighborhood was quiet. Too quiet. Word had spread, and people were keeping their distance from Karen's house. Curtains stayed drawn. Children played away from her yard. And for once, her porch, usually adorned with potted flowers and bold HOA, notices stood bare. I thought of my father again. How he always said, a badge is more than power, son. It's responsibility. Not to punish, but to guide. So, against my better judgment, I walked across the street and knocked on Karen's door. There was a long pause before it opened. She looked different eyes, red shoulders slumped, no trace of the sharp pride she usually carried. Her voice was low. What do you want? I kept my tone gentle. To talk. Just talk. For a moment, I thought she might slam the door, but instead, she sighed and stepped aside. I entered a living room that smelled faintly of lavender and coffee. Her son sat on the couch, dressed in a suit, his tie loosened, his face clouded with disappointment. He looked up at me with a mix of curiosity and embarrassment. Karen cleared her throat. "You already humiliated me yesterday? What more could you possibly have to say?" I looked at her, then at her boy. "I came to tell you the truth not as a police chief, but as a man who lost his father young. That car you wanted it isn't just shiny metal. It's my memory of him. Every scratch, every bolt, every roar of the engine, it's him. That's why I couldn't give it away." Her son leaned forward. "Mom, you didn't tell me that." Karen's eyes welled up. I didn't know. I just wanted you to have something special. I didn't think," her voice cracked. "I didn't think about what it meant to him." I nodded. "I know you love your son. That's clear. But love isn't about taking from others to give. It's about teaching him that he can build something of his own. Something no one can take away." Her son's voice was small but steady. "I'd rather earn my own memories than borrow someone else's." The room fell silent. Karen wiped her cheeks, staring at him as though seeing him differently for the first time. "I was wrong," she whispered, her pride finally giving way. "Chief Callahan, I'm sorry. I let my pride, my role in this HOA blind me. I thought I was helping my son, but all I did was teach him the wrong lesson." For the first time since I'd met her, her words sounded real, not coded in command or entitlement. Just a mother, stripped bare of her defenses. I softened. "We all make mistakes, Karen. What matters is what we do after. Learn from this. Show your son that pride doesn't come from possession, it comes from character." She nodded slowly, then turned to her boy. "I'll do better. I promise." When I left that house, the morning sun was rising, painting the street in gold. My Mustang gleamed in the driveway, but it no longer felt like the centerpiece of the story. The real story was about pride, humility, and second chances. Later that week, Karen surprised everyone by stepping down as HOA president. At the next community meeting, she apologized publicly for her actions. The neighbors, shocked at first, softened when they saw her sincerity. It wasn't easy, but in time, respect began to replace resentment. As for me, I drove my Mustang one evening, the engine purring under the sunset. I thought of my father again, and for once, the memory didn't sting with loss. It glowed with peace. Because sometimes, even in the ugliest conflicts, there's room for redemption. And sometimes, the greatest victories aren't won with badges, authority, or power, but with patience, truth, and the courage to forgive. So if you've ever been in a battle with someone entitled or unreasonable, remember this: people don't always need punishment. Sometimes they just need someone to show them a better way. And maybe, just maybe, that's the kind of legacy worth leaving behind.